I ended up leaving Goldman, and this is a story that actually most people don't know. All right, we are trying this out. Tiffany's YouTube channel. So, this first video, I'm going to share a little bit of my story and how I found myself becoming a creator and now getting swag like this, even though I don't really like the color, but that's another thing. And also, I wish they would send more fitted sizes, but I digress. Back in 2013, I attempted to have a YouTube channel. At the time, I wanted to become a news reporter or a TV talk show host. Then I was like, I'm gonna make a YouTube channel about the news, just going over daily headlines. But anyway, now it's 2022. I'm gonna try this again. I'm gonna try to be more consistent. I'm not yet gonna commit to a posting schedule because I wanna see if I actually have the capacity to be able to hop on here and record videos and also edit them, because that actually is the part that takes the most time. I have all of these experiences that I thought it might be helpful to create like office hours if people have questions about things, and I'm gonna root all of these in my own lived experience. Let's start from the beginning. I'm the first generation daughter of a Taiwanese immigrant, my dad, and a refugee from the Vietnam War, my mom. And a big turning point in my life happened when I was 9 years old, Thanksgiving weekend, dropping my mom off at the airport for a business trip. On the way home, my dad lost control of the car and we got into a car accident, a single vehicle car accident. And I sustained a slew of injuries, including breaking a couple bones in my leg and permanently paralyzing one of my arms, known as a brachial plexus injury. I was holding the grab handle in the car and ended up just severely stretching it, like a plug being pulled out from an outlet. Much later in 2019, the car accident was in 1997, I would be diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder or PTSD, a 22-year treatment gap. For 12 years after the car accident, from ages 9 until 21, as the daughter of Asian immigrants, I had just internalized that disability and death and mental health/trauma were all seen as shameful things that you shouldn't really talk about. For 12 years, I didn't tell anyone about the car accident. I wore long sleeves all the time to hide my arm. I told everyone my dad was away on a trip, which meant that a lot of people assumed that my injury, my paralyzed arm, was from birth. Part of the reason why I feel like I want to share my disability origin story is because I want to take control of my narrative. And I also want to put an asterisk in that not everyone is going to feel comfortable sharing their disability origin story or even talking about their disability, and that's okay. A big part of this channel is I want to highlight that the community isn't a monolith. Today, you've met Tiffany, who is a disabled person, which means that you've met one disabled person named Tiffany. And so much of my work today is really centered on how can we get people to see and celebrate the diversity that exists within the disability community. That's my origin story. I often talk about a second disability origin story, which is that point in time where a person who is disabled decides to take pride and ownership or even just acceptance of a disability identity. For me, that second origin story came in 2009, 12 years after the car accident, October 22nd, 2009. I was a senior in college at the time when I decided that I wanted to share the story of the car accident. Not everyone is going to have a second disability origin story, and that's okay. A lot of my work is how can we get as many people within our community to that second story? And again, the thing about stories is that they are a privilege to hear. We don't owe anyone our first or our second disability origin stories. I want to provide just a little bit of context into the experiences that I have had and who I am today. I attended Georgetown University. While I was there, I studied finance and accounting and ended up getting internships at UBS, Goldman Sachs, senior year of college, now have my full-time offer at Goldman in hand. That's when I started this club called Diversibility. Or let me rewind. On October 22nd, 2009, I had an opportunity to speak on a student panel. And at the end of the panel, I was like, I'm really curious what it might look like to create a club around a disability identity. And a couple years prior, I had experience being part of the founding team of a club at Georgetown rooted in a Taiwanese American identity. I'd been through the experience of creating a club before, and now I'm a senior, and I'm like, what if I create a similar club but around a disability identity? I ended up applying for something called the Reimagine Georgetown grant, and we ended up receiving a $500 grant to get this club started. And then in 2010, I ended up graduating and going off to work at Goldman. Diversability, which is the club that I had created, was under new leadership up until about 2014. Meanwhile, I am not actively involved. I spent 2 years in the analyst program at Goldman. My third year decided to transfer over to the recruiting team and was an investment banking campus recruiter for a year. I ended up leaving Goldman, and this is a story that actually most people don't know. I had gotten into a program called Venture for America, and it was a program that was focused on getting young talent into cities that were seeing a talent drain. I ended up getting into the program. I thought that I was going to do this fellowship, but it didn't end up working out. I moved back home because I thought I was going to move to a new city somewhere outside of New York City, and really thought about what I wanted to do. And I realized that I was really curious about working somewhere in the media space. I had a conversation with someone who worked at the BBC. They put me in touch with someone who worked at Bloomberg. I hopped into a phone call with them. They talked about their production assistant program. You'd enter as a contractor with an opportunity to move from a contract to a full-time employee. And even though I'd had this experience as an investment banker at Goldman Sachs, I really wanted to get my foot in the door. I was a production assistant for about 5 or 6 months before they promoted me to a segment producer. I ended up re-moving back to New York City. And while I was at Bloomberg, the company was starting to create their employee resource groups. These are communities for people who have different historically excluded identities. You could have a women's group, an Asian group, Black, Latinx, LGBT. And I got to be part of the founding team of the Disability Employee Resource Group. I was at Bloomberg for about a year, and about halfway through my experience, someone that I used to work with at Goldman reached out to me. They had been an investor in a media company from P. Diddy, Sean Diddy Combs. My contact reached out to me, thanks, Jay, and said, hey, I noticed that you have moved into the media space. Would you be interested in coming back into finance, but at a media company? So marrying your professional experiences so far. And I said, I'm not really looking right now, but I'm happy to have a conversation. Always just have the conversation, see where the opportunity goes. And I remember showing up to my conversation with the CFO, and I said, right now I'm pursuing this childhood dream in broadcast journalism, but I'm interested in a role where I feel like I have a seat at the table, a voice at that table, and an opportunity to be some version of my authentic self. And after a couple of months, I ended up getting the job offer. I thought it was a great way to leapfrog into leadership. I ended up joining that company as their director of business development, reporting directly to the CFO of the company, getting to sit in on board meetings and manage the financial model for the company, which I thought at 26 years old was just an incredible amount of responsibility. After about 2 years, I ended up applying to a coding boot camp that I had found randomly. And about a year into my time at Revolt, which was this media network that was founded by P. Diddy, I started to explore what it might look like to get back involved with the disability community. Now that I wasn't co-founding a disability employee resource group within my company, how could I still be involved? And it made me realize that there wasn't really a disability employee resource group that existed outside of a company, a community, a place for people to meet, to get to know each other, because it's actually in community that we end up healing, growing, unlearning our internalized ableism, learning what it means to be disabled and proud. I was doing that on the side. I started to get really interested in the intersection of disability and tech and the potential that technology had to be able to be the great equalizer for disabled folks. I was hosting these diversibility events on the side, still working full-time at Revolt, and ended up just applying to this coding boot camp, really with the idea that I would love to learn how to build, and I want to be able to build things that can help other folks within the disability community have the access that they need in order to thrive. Lo and behold, I get one of the 2 scholarships. And this is a full ride scholarship to do a full-time 3-month program in Amsterdam. At this particular point in time, I had never been to Europe before and hadn't really traveled at all. Here, I had an opportunity to learn something that I really wanted to learn and also do it in a place I had never been to before. And I felt kind of caught because I was in what I thought was everything I wanted on paper, my dream job at Revolt, when then I had started this side hustle, Diversibility, and I felt like my life was so colorful. Ultimately, I had a YOLO moment, a you only live once moment, and I said yes to the coding bootcamp in Amsterdam. I ended up quitting my job at Revolt and did so in a way where I feel like I still have a good relationship with most of the people I worked with and did this coding bootcamp. It was really hard. I think that's why they call it a boot camp. At that time, I started doing a little bit of freelance work, was interviewing at a couple of different places in tech roles, and was curious if maybe I was more interested in being a product manager, the bridge between the teams. But was also really thinking, is there a way that I can bring my community skills of what I've been doing with Diversibility and do it at a tech company, be like tech periphery? I got 2 job offers. One was to be the lead person of a remote work from anywhere company where I'd be in a new city or country every 1 to 2 months. And the other was a community role, but at a co-living company in San Francisco. After having spent 3 months in Amsterdam and traveling to new cities and countries almost every single weekend, I thought that maybe I would be a better participant on the remote work from anywhere company. And this next phase of my life was really looking at a place where I could see myself building some roots. I ended up moving to San Francisco, and I was their first and only hire there. Not only was I new to San Francisco, but I was also trying to sell co-living in San Francisco to the people who were touring this place. The job was really stressful. It was a sales hat and a community hat. And after about 6 months, I ended up getting fired. And 3 months before that happened, I'd actually ended up getting assaulted on my commute to work. So I was just in a lot of distress and trying to figure out whether it was through therapy, ways to feel like myself again in the city where someone had attacked me. And now in the age of anti-Asian hate, all of these acts that have happened have started to make a little bit more sense. So I got fired, and after that happened, I told myself, okay, I'm going to transition into working on Diversibility full-time. We had brought on a part-time team member to help us with some of the day-to-day operations. She ended up getting her dream job, Diversibility, serving as her job reference, which was amazing. And a month after I got fired, I got invited to speak at the late General Colin Powell's nonprofit, America's Promise, alongside President Bill Clinton, George Bush. I was one of the keynotes there. And then within a year of getting fired, I got invited to speak at Davos, the World Economic Forum's annual meeting, alongside CEOs, presidents of countries, university presidents, social entrepreneurs. And now fast forward 5 years, I have now been running Diversibility full time. We have an incredible team of 9 disabled folks, and I've been able to build a life and a career for myself as a creative entrepreneur. So that is my intro. Let me know if you have any questions, and I'm excited to dig into some of these experiences a little bit more over time through this channel. Show me some love in the comments, and if you are liking where this is going, feel free to subscribe. And over the past 2 years, I have been able to really tap into the potential of the creator economy. So I'm excited to see where this goes. But thank you so much for being here. I am recording this from bed because that is the new era that we are in. And I want to show that you can also thrive and work and do stuff from your bed. It doesn't matter where you do it from. Anyway, thanks so much for being here. And I hope to see you on the next episode.